the Cathar Empire, we've conquered 1,000 worlds. We've seen species of every shape, disposition, and pathetic attachment you can imagine. But the creature from that mud ball they call Earth, that was a special kind of funny. It was a small furry beast that followed its captured human child around with a bizarre lack of fear. We laughed. And that was if you love stories where humanity's hidden strengths get a chance to shine, consider subscribing to our channel for more tales from across the galaxy. We post new stories every week exploring those moments when aliens find out what really makes humans tick. Now, let's get back to the story. Fatal mistake. My name is Xylar. I'm the overseer of specimen acquisition aboard the Imperial Dredger Veracity. For 300 cycles, my job has been to appraise and categorize lesser life forms for the glory of the Cathar ascendancy. Our methods are flawless. Our judgment is absolute. We measure a species by its tech, its psionic potential, and its capacity for logic. And by those metrics, the species called human was a profound disappointment. We picked them up from their backwater planet, a Class 7 death world choked with plants and crawling with hyper-aggressive animals. The humans themselves were soft, illogical, and emotionally unstable. They were bipeds with no natural armor and pretty unimpressive physical strength. We figured their value was minimal, basic labor maybe, or a zoo exhibit. We'd grabbed a small group of them during a routine sweep of their system's asteroid belt, where they'd set up a laughably primitive mining colony. Among them was a juvenile female, designated Unit 734. The child, maybe 8 of her planet's years old, was quiet and watchful. Her big, expressive eyes didn't show any of the screaming panic we were used to seeing from other species. That by itself was a little odd, but not a big deal. What really got our ridicule was her companion. It was this little mammal, 10 kilos at most, with a stocky, low-slung body. Its fur had a stark pattern, jet black on its belly and legs, with a wide silver-white stripe running from its head to the tip of its short, bushy tail. It had no visible ears, just thick folds of skin, and its eyes were like tiny, dark beads that held a disturbing stillness. It followed Unit 734 everywhere with this distinctive, tireless trot. My second in command, Grak, a hulking Cathar whose 3 centuries of service hadn't done much for his wit, found the creature endlessly amusing. He'd clack his mandibles, the Cathar version of a laugh whenever he saw it. Overseer, he rumbled one cycle, his voice like scraping gravel. Look at the human's vermin. It walks around like it has a purpose. Doesn't it get that it's just property, same as its master? I watched them through the containment field. The child Lila, as I later learned she called herself, sat on the cold metal floor. The creature, which she called Stitch, was curled up next to her, sometimes lifting its head to sniff the recycled air with a loud snort. It's a pet, Grak, I replied, my voice flat and clinical. A common, if illogical, habit among infant species. They form bonds with lesser creatures to simulate dominance and deal with loneliness. It's a sign of deep psychological weakness. A weakness we'll exploit, Grak said, a cruel light in his central eye. But this one, it shows no fear. Not of us, not of the ship, not of the other specimens wailing in their cells. It just is inconsequential, I stated, turning away. Its lack of a proper fear response is probably a sign of low intelligence, nothing more. A simple beast for a simple species. Document it as Class F companion fauna and be done with it. It has no value. Grak clacked his mandibles again. As you command, Overseer. A worthless pet for a worthless species. We laughed together then, our voices echoing down the sterile corridor. It was the sound of supreme confidence, of arrogance. And it was a sound we would learn to regret very, very soon. The daily routines on the Veracity run on fear and control. We manage subjugated species with calculated intimidation. A sharp command, the crackle of a stun prod, the hulking presence of a Cathar guard, those are the tools of order. But the human kid and her pet just didn't play by the rules. During nutrient-paced distribution the next cycle, Grak was overseeing things with his usual heavy-handed impatience. The captives shuffle forward, take their rations, and retreat. Simple, efficient. When it was Lila's turn, she moved with that same weird calm. She took her nutrient block and was about to turn away when Grak, who was clearly bored and looking to start something, blocked her path on purpose. He was a mountain of scaled muscle, towering over the small human. "Where is your fear, little specimen?" he growled, his voice a low threat. "Don't you understand your place? You are nothing. Your species is nothing." Lila didn't answer. She just stared up at him, her gaze steady. Her refusal to cower clearly irritated Grak. He reached out a massive, 3-fingered hand and gave her a rough shove. Not enough to hurt her, but enough to send her stumbling back. She caught her balance, but the nutrient block fell from her hand and skittered across the floor. Before any of us could even blink, a low, guttural growl ripped through the air next to her. It wasn't loud, but it was packed with shocking intensity. Stitch, the pet, had moved to stand between Lila and Grak. Its fur was slightly raised, its small body coiled like a spring. It bared a set of short, sharp teeth, the growl rumbling in its chest like grinding stones. Grak froze for a split second, surprised, before throwing his head back and roaring with laughter. The other guards joined in. "It thinks it can protect you," Grak bellowed, pointing a thick claw at the creature. "This flea-bitten rat. Does it want to fight me? Me?" He took a step forward, looming over the tiny animal. Stitch didn't back down. It held its ground, its dark eyes locked on the giant Cathar, its growl deepening. That sheer total lack of fear was, for the first time, genuinely weird. Most creatures facing a predator 10 times their size would run or show submission. This one stood its ground like it was the one with the advantage. "Pathetic," Grak spat, his amusement souring into contempt. He raised his stun prod, the weapon humming with energy. "Perhaps I'll teach your pet some manners, human." But before he could, Lila spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise like a shard of glass. "Stitch, no. Stand down," and to my absolute shock, the creature instantly stopped growling. It gave Grak one last look of what I can only describe as pure hatred, then turned and trotted back to Lila's side, nudging her hand with its nose. The standoff was over. Grak lowered his prod, looking a little confused, but his arrogance snapped right back into place. "See? A coward, just like its owner." I wasn't so sure, though. I saw its eyes. It wasn't cowardice that made it stop. It was obedience. The bond between the child and her pet was more than just attachment. There was control there. Command. I made a mental note. This specimen, Unit 734, and her companion needed a closer look. The incident was a deviation from our models, and deviations, no matter how small, are a threat to order. Over the next few cycles, I focused my observation time on Unit 734 and her animal. I linked my personal data pad to their cell's recorders, cataloging everything with the cold detachment of a scientist. But the more I watched, the less the data fit with anything we knew about primitive master-pet relationships. The relationship wasn't one-sided. The child, Lila, was clearly the alpha, but her commands were soft, almost conversational. She'd murmur to the creature, and it would respond with an intelligence that was deeply unsettling. I saw her accidentally drop a small metal fastener from her clothing into a narrow crack in the floor. Her face flickered with distress. It clearly meant something to her. The honey badger, Stitch, saw this. It sniffed the crack, then looked at the child. Then it did something I had to rewind 3 times to believe. It picked up a thin piece of discarded wire from a corner, and using its long, sharp claws with surprising dexterity, it started probing the crevice. For several minutes, it patiently worked the wire until it hooked the fastener and dragged it out. It then pushed the object toward Lila with its nose. That's not what a simple animal does. That's tool use. That's problem solving. My datapad flagged it with a high-priority anomaly alert. Tool use is a sign of major intelligence, something we rarely saw outside of primates. I took the recording to Grak. "The human's companion is showing level 4 intelligence," I reported. "It's using tools." Grak watched the playback, his big face showing nothing. When it was over, he snorted. "A clever trick. So it's a smart rat. Big deal. It changes nothing, Overseer. Intelligence without strength is meaningless." "Can it break this ship's hull?" "Can it beat a Cathar warrior?" "No, it's a parlor trick." His dismissal was typical, but it didn't calm the unease growing inside me. I kept watching. I saw the creature's strange physiology in action. One of the lesser guards, annoyed about something, swatted Stitch with a deactivated stun prod. The hit was solid, enough to bruise or break the bones of a normal animal. Stitch got knocked sideways, but it hopped right back up, shook its body like it was swatting a fly, and glared at the guard. No yelp of pain, no sign of injury. Its skin, I realized, seemed to move independently from its body, thick and rubbery. It absorbed the blow in a way our anatomical models just couldn't explain. But the bond was the most puzzling part. It went beyond commands. There were these quiet moments of companionship that defied all our models. Sometimes in the dead of the artificial night, I'd see a silent tear track down Lila's face. In those moments, Stitch would press against her and make a low purring hum. Her breathing would steady, her sadness seeming to melt away. It was a symbiotic relationship, emotional and functional. I started digging through our xenobiological databases, trying to find a match for this thing. No exact match, but there were similar species from other death worlds. All of them were classified as hypercarnivores, apex survivors known for extreme aggression. The name from the Human Miner's Manifest was Mellivora capensis. A quick search on the primitive human internet gave me horrifying results. Humans called it the honey badger, and in their own records, it was literally listed as the world's most fearless animal. Videos showed these little creatures driving off lions, killing venomous snakes, and fighting with a ferocity totally out of proportion to their size. They were described as relentless, indomitable, and brutally violent. And this human child had one that was not just tamed, but utterly devoted to her. My 3 hearts started beating in a rhythm that wasn't entirely clinical. Humans didn't keep these things as pets. They couldn't domesticate them. The evidence pointed to something far more unsettling. They formed alliances with them. I went to Grak one last time with my compiled report. Grak, we have to reclassify the human and her companion. They are a potential high-level threat. The creature isn't a pet. It's a biological weapon, and the child is its handler. Grak turned to me, his patience finally gone. By the first spawns, Xylar, have you lost your nerve? It is a child and her furry toy. I'm sick of your paranoia. You've been staring at screens too long. I will prove to you, once and for all, how meaningless they are. He turned and stomped toward the holding cells, his heavy footsteps thudding with grim purpose. I followed, a cold dread coiling in my gut. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to my core, that Grak was about to make a fatal miscalculation. He was about to apply cold Cathar logic to a problem born from the chaotic, unpredictable heart of a death world. And he was absolutely going to pay the price for it. Grak walked into the cell block with the swagger of an executioner. The other guards, sensing their commander's mood, stood up straighter. He shut off the containment field to Unit 734's cell with a flick of his wrist. The energy hum died and the air grew heavy. Lila and Stitch looked up from the corner. Overseer Xylar believes you are a threat, Grak announced, his voice booming. He stepped into the cell, his massive body blocking the light. He thinks this thing is a weapon. I think you are just a soft, pathetic species that needs a reminder of its place. Lila stood up slowly. She put herself in front of Stitch, a tiny, fragile barrier against a titan. Leave us alone, she said, her voice trembling for the first time. Or what? Grak mocked. You'll cry? You'll have your pet growl at me? He took another step, his shadow swallowing them whole. He raised his heavy open palm. The message was clear. He was going to strike her, to break her spirit and prove he was in charge. I saw it all happen in slow motion. I saw the fear finally flash in Lila's eyes. Not for herself, but for what she was about to do. I saw her look down at the little black and white creature at her feet. Her lips formed a single, soft-spoken word. A command. Stitch. Play. It was the last word Grak ever heard clearly. What happened next wasn't a fight. It was an explosion of pure, unrestrained violence. Stitch moved with a speed that defied its stocky frame. It was a black and white blur, a living missile of tooth and claw. Grak, in his arrogance, probably expected a bite to the leg, something he could shrug off. He was not prepared for the creature to launch itself directly at his throat. Its claws, the ones I'd seen used so delicately with the wire, now revealed their true purpose. They were weapons. Incredibly long and sharp, they sliced through Grak's tough, scaled hide like it was paper. Grak roared, a sound of shock and searing pain. He swatted at the creature, trying to get it off, but its hold was absolute. He finally grabbed it, his massive hand closing around the honey badger's body. He squeezed, meaning to crush it. But that's when the creature's other terrible adaptation kicked in. Its skin was impossibly loose and thick. Squeezing did nothing. Instead of being crushed, Stitch just twisted inside its own skin, a grotesque feat of biomechanics that let it turn and bite Grak's hand. Even while being held in a death grip, Grak screamed, a high-pitched sound of agony no Cathar was ever meant to make. He let go, and in that instant, Stitch was free. It hit the floor and immediately went back on the attack. It didn't fight with tactics. It fought with the relentless berserker fury of a death-world predator. It tore at his legs, shredding muscle and tendon. Its powerful jaws, strong enough to crack a tortoise shell, bit down on Grak's ankle with a sickening crunch of bone. The other guards were frozen, paralyzed by shock. Their minds, so used to order and predictable results, just couldn't process what they were seeing. A 10-kilo animal was systematically and brutally taking apart a 300-kilo battle-hardened Cathar warrior. Grak stumbled backward and fell against the cell wall, his massive weight making the whole section shudder. Stitch was relentless. It scrambled up his fallen body, a demon of black and white fur, and went for his face. Its snarls were a terrifying soundtrack to Grak's gurgling screams. Laughter was a forgotten concept. The only thing left in that corridor was the sound of primal terror. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Stitch, enough. Lila's voice was a whisper, but it hit like a thunderclap. The honey badger, poised to strike again, froze. It turned its head, its muzzle dripping with the purple blood of my second-in-command, and looked at the child. It gave a soft chuffing sound, then trotted back to her side, pressing against her leg as if for comfort. The silence that fell was absolute, broken only by Grak's shallow, rattling breaths. He lay broken on the floor, a monument to a fatal miscalculation. The other guards just stared, their weapons lowered, their eyes wide with a new and profound understanding of fear. They weren't looking at Grak. They were looking at the little human girl and the blood-soaked creature that now sat calmly at her feet. After that, no Cathar dared go anywhere near Unit 734's cell. We gave her a larger, more comfortable quarter and made sure everyone gave her a wide berth. Grak was moved to the med bay. His career as a warrior was over, his mind shattered not by his wounds, but by the sheer, unbelievable ferocity of his attacker. He was now a living monument to our ignorance. I rewrote my reports to High Command. Class F companion fauna was deleted. Pet was deleted. My new entry was stark and direct. Species Mellivora capensis. Classification, Level 10, biological weapon. Temperament, hyper-aggressive, displays unnatural fearlessness. Intelligence, sapient adjacent, capable of tool use and tactical problem-solving. But it was the final note, under the entry for humanity, that would change Cathar doctrine forever. I wrote, "The species human shouldn't be measured by its tech or its strength. Their real power comes from something we always dismissed as a weakness, their ability to form emotional bonds with other species. They don't conquer nature, they assimilate it. They don't tame beasts, they form alliances with monsters. We cataloged their weaknesses for centuries, but we never understood their strength. Underestimating any part of humanity, from their intellect to their emotions, to the seemingly harmless creatures they keep by their sides, is a fatal mistake. We had laughed at the human's pet. We had mocked its lack of fear. We saw a small animal and judged it by its size. We completely missed that we weren't looking at a pet. We were looking at the distilled essence of a death world's will to survive, a living weapon of terrifying efficiency, held in check only by the love of a child. And that, I realize now, is the most dangerous thing in the entire galaxy. If you enjoyed this look at humanity's unexpected power, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and make sure you subscribe with notifications on. We've got plenty more stories like this, and trust me, you don't want to miss them.